Hola. Hola. Saludos desde Australia. Gracias por tu hospitalidad. Estoy excitado de estar aquí. Me tienen que perdonar porque no hablo español. Así que con suerte no dije gracias por tu orgasmo. Did I say something wrong? Espero que mi presentación sea significativa para ustedes de alguna manera. Volveré a cambiar a inglés australiano ahora. Gracias. I noticed all the other people had
Me di cuenta que los demás tenían
my
esto, así
Twitter
que lo
handle
puse
if
yo
you want to
también.
tweet,
No
and
voy a
some
hacer
suggested
menos.
hashtags as well. Thank you. It's been amazing being here. All of you have made me feel so welcome. It's about 12 hours from Melbourne, Australia, so it's not too long. You just compile your Xcode project. It takes about that time. And yeah, it's wonderful to be here. I wanted to talk to you today about winning the most important race. For many of you, Starsconf is a bit of a rest. Oh, it's a breather, it's a bit of a break. Because many of us are busy running. We're running a company, we're running a business unit, we're running a team or our own business, right? And we're just trying to do a good job. And we're climbing, we're achieving, we're trying to get the next thing done all the time, and the next, and the next. And it feels like a race. And often, it is a race. We're racing against other people. We're racing maybe against real problems, business problems. Maybe we're trying to solve social problems or medical problems, or we're racing against time. And life is pretty competitive. And I know this. I've had a bit of an intense life. I've had careers as a researcher, getting a PhD, and as a management consultant. I've published and written methodologies used by people all over the world. And as a startup founder and entrepreneur, I've created products that are used by thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And in this later stage of my life, particularly as a tech startup founder and entrepreneur, I want to talk to you a bit about that today. So for a lot of you who might be working in tech or startups, it's always nice to say, so we had this startup that we raised money for, but we forget that we've spent years doing these things. We've spent years working on that. So just want you to remember that in the lead up to a lot of things, I've been working and trying things, and things aren't always successful. So around 2012, the first startup that I had funded, along with my co-founders, was Refresh. And Refresh is a platform for taking social media feeds and turning them into something richer and more interactive. So, you've got a photo gallery, but you push it through our tool, and it's interactive. You can pause it, you can touch it, and it's a richer experience. This is the MVP. We raised about $320K US for the three of us, and the experience is great. People really loved it. And then the question is, well, who's actually the paying customer? So we saw the advertising industry as a potential one. So we were on a roadshow in New York to pitch to advertising companies when we launched the Kickstarter campaign for a small side project that we had. We were working in the evenings and on the weekends. So we put it out on Kickstarter, and we managed to raise 1.3 million US in 9 days. So that was a good result with over 9,200 people backing this. And we closed it off in about 9 days because at that point, we had this product that we thought we could build. And the product is a Wi-Fi LED light bulb. It's a light bulb you can just screw in like a normal light bulb, and you can control it through your app or a website. Our main competitor is Philips Hue, who came out around the same time. And we close it off because when you're doing things like Kickstarter, you're pretty sure you've got it worked out, but maybe you're not sure. And if we'd let the even more money come in over the 60 days, if our calculations were a bit off, if you've got a whole lot more backers, that calculation, that error is a lot bigger. And the publicity and hype was crazy. So we didn't sleep for 3 days through all of this was happening. Busy answering emails. We'd go to TechCrunch. We went to the TechCrunch conference and people were recognizing us. It was on TV, MSNBC, Wired, The Economist. And it's really interesting when you have a product that suddenly you have an instant following. You have an instant community worldwide. It's always really scary after Noah to show any graphs or whatever. This is from one of our dashboards. Is he judging me? Can you see? So this is from one of our dashboards showing where the various orders from around the world came from. So we had customers from over 70 countries, and the red dots show where people have ordered 10 units or more, right? And you're looking at that going, this has happened. We're really fortunate. Most people are trying to get some customers, and we've got the customers. They believe in the product. We just have to make the product, that's all. So it was quite an amazing experience. Now, the challenge, though, is you're making this product when everyone's actually looking at you, where everyone's watching, all right? And they believe in you. You just have to make the product. And nobody's really made this product before. Just to give you an idea, when we announced the actual shape of the bulb after a lot of design work, here it is in New York with PR. And it's a very interesting sort of product where, LifeX is actually a full stack company with a full stack product. For a lot of people, when they hear full stack, they're thinking, front end, middleware, back end. And for us, full stack is actually, you've got silicon chips that go into a module that's in hardware, and then there's firmware running on that. You've got wireless protocols, and then you've got front-end apps, you've got mobile apps, you've got an API, and you've also got to design the box around it. So it's quite a complex product. Oh, the other thing with the box is once the box is made in China, you have to figure out how to get it to Santiago, right? So you've actually got atoms, bloody atoms, not just electrons. So it's a tricky, challenging product to make. In addition to all of that, you want to make it a great experience. You want to make it really nice. You've got boxes that you want to design that convey the necessary information for compliance, to tell people, you won't be electrocuted if you use it like this, but you also want it to be, an attractive product. This is from our ad that we shot in the US, and we shipped the product after about a year. We were planning to ship the product in 6 months, but we went over, like many Kickstarter projects. And then we spoke to people in the consumer electronics business, and we found out we're supposed to really take 3 years to do this, or 2 years if we're lucky. So it's helpful to not know some of these things sometimes. And this shows a bit about where the sausage is made. This is from the LifeX office in Melbourne, and not a girl in sight. I find it helpful to see some of this sometimes because it shows some of the people, and there's actually people behind these things. And since then, LifeX has continued to scale. All right, new products with different form factors. And it turns out the market is really interested in what we call feature lighting, things that do different colors and stuff like that, not just regular lights. And it's quite popular, having different tiles of different kinds. The interesting thing about LifeX is actually, thinking about that map of the world, how the world responds to it. So you built a product, and actually the world is responding to it, and the world, really likes it. We've got celebrities like from Breaking Bad, Jamie Foxx. And sometimes I find it interesting to go onto Instagram and just see how the world is actually, using your product and loving your product. And of course, I wouldn't be a good entrepreneur if I didn't say that you can also get your LifeX bulbs with this discount code for free shipping over $50. So this will last until early next week. Always be selling. So it turns out, and you always use data, free shipping converts better than a percentage, and it's really expensive to ship to Chile. So take advantage of this. Keep buying it. Jamie Foxx, endorses the product. No. So it's been a really interesting and amazing ride. So I've got my shares in LifeX. And I've moved on to do some interesting other things, and I act as a bit of an ambassador for them, and I go in to make sure, how are things going? Are things going well? And I hope some of you are experiencing this or have experienced this. It's an amazing experience. But in many ways, it's also an illusion. Tech startups are so exciting, but there's also this other side to them. Elon Musk tweeted recently, "The reality is great highs, terrible lows, and unrelenting stress." Don't think people want to hear about the last two. There's the stress of running your startup. Have you waited too long to ship your product? Will there be enough or even any customers? Will you run out of money? How do you fire that employee who just separated from his wife? Or maybe you're an employee. Why do they keep asking you to do stupid, pointless things? Why don't I ever do anything new? I'm afraid I'm going to be, I'm getting dumber every day. Can I survive my manager who's a real asshole? I hate going into work every day and I get so stressed thinking about it, but I have a family to feed. Or maybe you have to fire one of your co-founders because they've been driving the company into the ground. These are all examples I've either lived through or been very close to with other people from other startups. And the lows and the unrelenting stress that Elon Musk talked about, they're very real and they're very heartbreaking. They put strain on us, strain on our families. Maybe things weren't so great with your family to start with. Maybe they're not sure about you doing what you're doing. I'd say some of the stresses that have happened with the startup stuff really contributed to the failure of my marriage. Or maybe your partner's sick and sometimes they die. And what does that mean for your race, And how do you carry on? A recent, it's not so recent, but some years back in the US, they did a study and they found that 49% of entrepreneurs reported at least one mental illness, right? And just for depression, so we'll just look at depression, 30% of them reported depression, and that's versus 7% average in the US, There's a lot. And then there's the cultural attitudes in the tech and startup world. So this is the well-known one. Sleep when you're dead. Plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. Work, sleep, family, friends, exercise. Pick any three. You can't have them all. And then Marissa Mayer, former CEO of Yahoo, early employee of Google, on the question of could you work 130 hours a week? The answer is yes, if you're strategic about when you sleep, when you shower, and how often you go to the bathroom. So I think there's a workshop about the bathroom thing in the afternoon, so you can go and find out, agile shit. I don't know. This is a good one. So Justin Keller was a startup guy, and he wrote an open letter to the mayor of San Francisco. And he said, "The wealthy working people have earned their right to live in the city. I shouldn't have to see the pain, struggle, and despair of homeless people to and from my way to work every day." And there were a lot worse things, but I couldn't fit them on the slide. I don't know what it's like in Latin America, but in the Western world, it's crazy, all the things that we're hearing about that have happened to women, right, in business, but also in tech. There was a study where they found that female executives who were Black, Latina, or multiracial were non-existent at 8 of the 23 companies in the study, including Adobe Systems, Google, and Lyft. I did a Google Images search for startup founders, and this is what I found. Let's use your pattern matching engine. And meanwhile, a lot of us are also having really big, serious questions while all these difficult things are happening, like Angular versus React, or Node versus Python, or Postgres versus MongoDB, and maybe the less technical of us are talking about, but more importantly, I'm spaces. Oh, I've lost half the audience. I like Ruby, so, whatever. But even stepping outside from our industries, there's people who don't have places to sleep. There's things that we don't understand why it's happening. There's people in pain and people who aren't being seen. And it feels like there's so much tragedy and the world doesn't seem to be working very well. So we're busy running our race, and it's got really amazing and extraordinary aspects, but it can also be really brutal and sometimes really crushing. Our desired success and payoff is also not guaranteed, and the world around us is also on fire. So what's the meaning of my race? What's the meaning of what I do? How do I live? How do I relate to these problems? How do I live a life that makes sense? So I started looking at the work of someone called Bronnie Ware. She's well known, she's Australian, and she's well known for something she wrote. She was a nurse who spent the last weeks and months with people who were dying. And she wrote something that talked about what were their top 5 regrets of all these people. And it's interesting. So I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. And finally, I wish that I had let myself be happier. And so for me, moving off from LifeX and looking what's next, what are some of the things that I want to do, it wasn't just what do I want to do, but how do I want to make these choices? How do I want to live? How do I live a life that helps me navigate through some of these challenges I talked about earlier? To not live a life of regret, to live and relate authentically. And I asked myself, who might have thought about some of these questions before? People who might have thought about these problems a long time ago, definitely before January 1, 1970. So I thought about, well, it's the Greeks. Oh, sorry, not those Greeks. But it's the Greek philosophers who actually spent a lot of time thinking about these things. And they talked about it in the context of love. Now, when many of us think about love, we tend to think about something like this. I'm going to stay on this slide for a while. Yeah, I like it too. So it's very distracting. We think love, yeah, but after we take a breath, we also think, yes, there's also romantic love, but we also know there's love for our friends, things like, we would call this the bromance, hey bro. But we also know about the love that we have for other people, for society, that sort of thing. And the way that the Greeks thought about love is really just another way of saying, how do I relate to someone else, right? What's a good way to relate to someone else? And they were great because they broke it down into a whole lot of different ways of doing that, different lenses that we can look at that. And so they have eros, okay, that's that sexual passion. But in my everyday, I like to think about it as what's the passion and excitement that I have for what I do, all right? The things I'm creating, the interests that I have. There's philia. It's that brother-sister love. It's that thing that comes from, do you remember we were in that company? Man, it was crazy. We survived it together. Your comrades, your team. It's very interesting because Aristotle also talks about it as your customers, right? That you actually have a really close bond like that. There's agape. It's that selfless, unconditional love, thinking about the good of everyone. Pragma, it's not just a directive for your preprocessor. It's actually practical, valuable love. The one that says, hey, we're working together because it makes sense. Okay, it's convenient. It's good for us. Storge, it's a bit like philia, but it's that commitment and loyalty. It's about the team. It's about your tribe. It's about your community. There's ludus, which is about being playful, fun and casual. It's that where you're enjoying, when you're enjoying with your team, a beer or lots of beers at the end of the day. We had a good day. That was really great what we did. And one that we don't think about so often is philautia, which is self-love, thinking about yourself, taking care of yourself. And I found these very helpful to think about how do we love when we're in life, not just our families, but also in work and what we do. How do we relate well to each other? How do we be true to each other? And the interesting thing is, we actually already know this, all right? We talk about it, but we already know this. We just don't like to talk about it in detail sometimes because it's a bit scary. We've been conditioned to be practical. It's all about profit. It's all about revenue and shareholder return. Yet we also enjoy when we help other people. All right, I've seen this in so many businesses and startups in the last, over 20 years. But, we feel a bit uncomfortable talking about it because, serious person, it's all about, profit, revenue. Or we're supposed to be really selfish. Got to think about yourself and not think about the greater good. Or it's maybe difficult to enjoy our passion. Don't enjoy what you do. It's nice, but what's important is results, outcomes. And if we can maybe overcome our fear, maybe we can live in a way that matters. Maybe we can love in a way that matters. And so I started thinking more deliberately, with intention and actively about how I could do that in a practical way, with business and life. I want to share some of those with you. So the first thing for me was, build businesses that add value for everyone, okay? So, do you want to create a business that's just about money, that's just exploiting an opportunity? Do you care about the impact that you have on people, on society, on families? Now, the interesting thing is, most businesses and most business activities actually do add value, and that's a good thing. We don't all have to make orphanages or all sorts of things. That's good, but most businesses actually do add value. And if you're doing that, can you run your business in a good way? You know, we do live in an imperfect world, and there are always consequences with what we do. Do we talk about those consequences? You know, could we be running our business that does add value? Could we be running it in a really bad way, doing things that aren't very good? Because if we don't ask those hard questions, we might lose our way, okay? We might be someone with a great brand, but we damage it because we do stupid things, all right? And we create what I would call a shitstorm, all right? Love your team. Now, your team turns out to be your first customers, okay? And we spend so much time at work. We spend so much of our lives at work, and we bring our best to work. And we also sometimes bring our worst to work. We know that work also brings out our worst sometimes, and we take that home. But it can also be a really good place, a good place where we get encouragement, a place where we can rest and recover, a place where we can do great things that bring meaning into our lives, a place of sisterhood, a place of brotherhood, of comradeship and belonging. And so people bring their selves to work, and we also need to look after those selves, love those selves, you know. And you might think, well, shouldn't we all be very professional? You should always be professional, but life is personal, all right? I like to go, yep, life's personal, that's true. So let's just go in with that, okay? So this is my son when I was doing some testing with LifeX before we shipped the product overseas. I blame his mother. It's a bit crazy. But I shared that with you because for me, any startup that I do, it's not just me, it's a family. The family's doing the startup. And I like to bring my son to work, introduce him, help him understand what it is that I do, what am I doing now, because they're actually part of that journey. Because you're going to be spending a bit of time away from them as well. And it's great to involve them, all right? Your team is really, really crucial. And in terms of loving your team, well, sometimes it makes sense for you not to be together and go your separate ways. Things change, people change. Sometimes people also have problems they need to deal with. And there are ways to love people so that we can go our different ways in a good way, in a gracious way. So we've still got good relationships and maybe possibilities for the future. Life can be really long and the world can be really small, and you don't know when you'll be working together again. Now, your customers. So love your customers and they'll love you back. So we know the importance of customer service, or customer experience as we now call it, and it's probably more accurate and it's a better focus. Those moments of truth where they call us to complain or ask a question or praise us. Those moments of truth where we can dramatically change the customer's view and experience of us. But you know, it goes deep. It goes much deeper than talking nicely with your customers. What are we building for our customers? You know, it extends beyond customer experience to the things we make. Do we care about them and respect them? Because they're going to be experiencing those moments of truth where they open up our app every day, or switch on our light bulb, or use our process, or read our documentation, or fill out our form. Those are all moments where we can express that love for somebody else. And that's got a practical benefit as well. It's also practical love for us in the market. I often think when I use LifeX, how many times does a person actually turn on that light, change that light, flip open the app? And all those are opportunities to make someone's life better or worse. And it's the opportunity to reduce friction and lift someone into a better experience and improve their day. And there's a storge love aspect to it, that loyalty and commitment to the relationship, okay? I talked about pragma, that practical love. I often think about that with this. So I don't know if any of you have been using the Nintendo Switch. It's quite an amazing product. And they learn from the design mistakes of the Wii U. And when you use it, you know, it's not perfect, but it's quite spectacular, all the things they've done. You know, in 1 year, shortly, it will have surpassed all the sales of all the Wii U over its 5-year lifespan. All right, your customers will reward you. They'll reward you for being part of their lives. They'll reward you for having good conversations with them. I also learned to try to find the passion and joy in what you do. And that's that eros bit, without the sexual passion. But that passion about, you know, the work that we do, okay, getting lost in it, enjoying it. Because sometimes we don't do that. We're on about the business. We're on about the business, business, business. And yes, you do need money coming in, but there's something really special of enjoying what we do and finding possibilities in that may become the next business idea. Ludus love is about enjoying the journey. And not everyone actually does this. I actually wrote a project methodology for one of our major banks. And at the end of each major stage, we actually had a step saying, celebrate the end of this stage. It was actually a step in the process, right? Celebrate that. Because we're working all the time. And it's really important that we celebrate who we are, that we celebrate the conversations that we have, that we celebrate that it's fun working, you and me, that we just had a difficult experience, or we won, or maybe that we lost. But we don't actually sometimes celebrate enough. So enjoy that journey, because all of you will be on special journeys at some point in your time. So find value for everyone. Empathize and be vulnerable. So I think about this with, particularly with the philia and storge love that comes from working together with business partnerships. So a big one, I was talking with one friend, is like treating your suppliers well. You see, that's pretty weird, because normally you're supposed to treat your suppliers really badly because they're out to get you. But he was actually saying, no, we have to love people properly. You know, we have to respect them and work with them. They're also trying to survive. So there's ways of actually having great, respectful and good relationships with your partners, your suppliers, and even your competitors, and understanding where are they coming from. In Australia, I don't know if they do it here in Chile, but we have something called a CEO Sleepout. This is where the CEOs of the top companies actually sleep like with homeless people. And they do it to raise money, but also to raise awareness. But many of them actually start to understand, okay, this is actually a difficult problem. People are trapped in this experience, okay? They can have opinions about it, but when they're actually doing it, they actually properly empathize. They actually properly become vulnerable and understand the reality of it. I've talked to some of them, you know. And when we actually look at other people, we might actually consider that we're pretty understanding, but I'd actually say, listen harder, have better conversations, because you might actually be able to empathize a lot more. Maybe it's the women and people of diversity that we have that we're dealing with, you know, the women who are now saying, you know, we've been treated really unfairly, and try to understand, what does that mean? You know, people from different cultures, different ages, and the challenges that they have. Now, a big one for me is actually investing back in society. All right, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the people who have fought for things in our society. You know, none of us would be able to live and work and do businesses if people didn't invest in the greater good, that agape. You know, I said that sometimes the world seems to be on fire. Well, actually, the world's always been on fire. There's always been tragedy, always been sadness, always been people who are going hungry. And we benefit today because others saw that. Others saw problems that they needed to fix for the greater good. basic things like the rights of work, rest and leisure, the basic rights to be treated equally like a human being, things that we might actually take for granted. And so it's our turn to invest back in society, part of that love for the greater good, that agape. And so what are we fighting for? And what are we investing in? Are we stepping out of our normal, narrow, focused lives and giving back so that we can keep creating and recreating a better society that we can live in and do great business in? You know, what society are we trying to build? Be part of that. And I love the energy here in Chile, you know, not just, you know, with interesting tech people, but there's this feeling of building, growing, struggling, fighting for things, fighting against things. And it's interesting because struggle brings out the best in us and brings out the best of us. And it's unfortunately less when we've actually arrived at a better place. And so this is an interesting one, establishing boundaries and sticking to them. I think it's really important to draw lines on behavior that's unacceptable, on things that we don't work on, or maybe we're actually a bit too cautious. We need to be stronger. On prioritizing the wrong things, sacrificing personal relationships or family. Draw a line, say things, no, I'm not going to sacrifice this. Or maybe working with the wrong people. So many businesses have failed because we didn't have the courage to draw a line. We were afraid of having a difficult conversation. Or there was a ninja rock star that we needed to keep happy, even though he was a real asshole and a real cancer to the team. But he ends up leaving anyway, or getting fired, but the deep damage has already been done. Drawing boundaries and lines is actually also love. It's making a statement to someone, you're better than this, don't behave like this. It's also making a statement to others saying, I care for the team, okay? I care for the team, that's why I'm saying, that person shouldn't do that. Or I'm choosing these things over my family, I'm choosing these things for my family, all right? Over, money or other things. Let's do that. When we don't draw lines, we enable each other in unhelpful behavior. So learn to draw lines. And the final thing is, take care of yourself. Make sure you love yourself, that you've got time to breathe, time to reflect, because that's when really powerful things can happen. Spend time with your family. Understand that's one of the reasons for doing what you do. Right? Get sleep. Not this kind of sleep, but proper sleep. Take the time to eat. Not powdered Soylent that is an optimal meal replacement for people in Silicon Valley so that you don't have to actually chew food. Eat food, real food. And most importantly, go to the toilet. Take as long as you want, go as often as you want, and take your time in the toilet. So the race goes on. Starsconf is going to end, and we're going to get back to the marathon, and it's going to be every day, step after step. And when we look back, as we're running the race, and as we finish the race, will we have run a race that has made us happy and joyful? A life full of relationships, of joy and authenticity, of being true to yourself? Will we live a life with as little regret as possible, or are we going to be weighed down with regret? We only have one life, and each of you are the most important actor in that life, in your race, and you deserve to win. So go out and have the courage to win. Thank you. Gracias.
Pasemos a las preguntas. Tenemos tiempo para preguntas. Tenemos tiempo para preguntas. ¿Quién quiere hacer preguntas? ¿Allá? ¿Una?
Hola, buenos días. Quería agradecerte por esta charla tan inspiradora. Hablando cosas efectivamente que todos sabemos, pero no las asumimos que sabemos. Se habla mucho de la inclusión de las mujeres en la tecnología. Las mujeres siempre hemos estado en la tecnología. La tecnología y las áreas tecnológicas no son especialmente machistas, estamos inmersos en una sociedad machista, racista, homofóbica y discriminadora. En ese sentido, cuando hablamos de inclusión, creo que en estos momentos estamos cayendo en una falsedad a veces, y aquí es donde viene mi pregunta, porque estamos cayendo en una paradoja, porque estamos incluyendo a personas que siempre hemos estado ahí, pero nos quieren relegar a espacios tal vez así como, ay no, el back es más difícil, es cosa de hombres, esa cosa de colores es de mujeres o de gays. O sea, no. O ya, incluyamos las mujeres.
And we have NGOs to teach women to code, and we teach them JavaScript, or those simple things, and that pay 1/3 less. And women, after they go through those NGOs, or the make, which is not good enough, they have to pay these NGOs that taught them whatever is needed to be part of the technology. So the question is, how do we go for inclusion, but that is honest, in a market that whenever you say I want to make the same money that a man is making, you say, but you bargained it wrongly. Your negotiation was not good from the beginning. What you do is easier. The color thing is easier. It's not primary. It's secondary. So that's why it is less. It's paid less. So how do we level up the market without being considered communist? Because the picture you showed anarchists, anarchists that fought for 8 hours, they also died. So how not to die in the attempt of doing something?
Thank you. It's interesting. I think there are a lot of people who think, oh, poor women. I know, I'll help them like this. All right? And a lot of people don't understand, a lot of men don't understand that you're still being, you are a passive sexist. Right? You are a passive sexist simply because you're a man, you're living in a world that is pretty cool for you, and you don't understand what women go through. You don't understand that most women don't feel safe in a meeting, in a car park, on the street, right? You don't feel safe having conversations. That's why you want to have fitness centers that are just women, or maybe business meeting groups that are just women, right? It's trying to say, well, you guys are like this, we're being like this. No, actually, you know, women are saying we need our own space. And this also happens if you're working with people from indigenous groups. So for example, in my work now, I'm dealing with Aboriginal people in Australia. It's very easy to say, yes, I know you have problems, but can't you just try harder? You know, here's some money, try harder. You actually need to have that empathy. So I think what needs to happen is people, or in many situations, men, white men, need to actually properly empathize and understand what it is that women go through. And then you start seeing better solutions, right? You stop having statements like, well, yeah, I'll happily employ any women. They just got to try harder to apply for more jobs. You actually start saying, well, actually, maybe I need to encourage women to apply. Maybe I need to create a better space for them to participate. because they're so far behind. I've actually got to create more opportunity for them. So I think for me, much happens when you actually start listening properly, because then you start going, oh, I actually need to do much more work to actually create the opportunities. I actually realize I am prejudiced and biased in ways I never thought. The interesting thing is, I showed my son, the first time he came to LifeX when he was 3, he came, saw it was pretty cool, and he said, Dad, how come there are no girls here? And most guys coming in would just go, oh wow, cool, free coffee, right? So he hasn't had that happen so much. So that's my journey, that when I really listen, I start going, whoops, I shouldn't say that, I should do this more. I don't realize what struggles they have.
Hola, gracias por la charla y tengo dos preguntas más técnicas, podríamos decir. Lo primero es, ¿qué te llevó a innovar en el mundo de la Internet de las cosas con la ampolleta? ¿Fue resolver un problema? ¿Fue la tecnología o fue la mezcla de ambas? Eso fue lo primero. Y lo segundo es, ¿cómo proteges tu invención a nivel mundial?
Okay, so I think with the light bulb, it was more a case of, well, you don't get up to change the TV with, you don't go and do this. You just sit there and you go like this. And there are so many things that are Wi-Fi, so it just made sense that was a thing that would happen. And we thought, that makes sense, let's do that. Because if you're doing it because it's lots of fun, you might be crazy. It's really, really hard. And you do sit there going, I wish I'd had an idea for, just a website. That's much easier, right? So it's exciting, winning at a challenge. But I think we thought, this is a good idea, let's try and do this. And then we'll make the technology fit. The other question, hang on, what was the other question? Oh yes, how do you protect your ideas? So, we put patents there because we raise money in Silicon Valley and they really like it if you've got patents, that kind of thing. But really you have to ask yourself, what is the asset? So the shape of our bulb, how it looks, is copied all over China. I've got friends who say, hey, I've seen your bulb copied everywhere. But you've got to ask yourself, what is the asset? And the asset is the software that is running inside the bulb. The software that is in those chips that make the bulb behave how it behaves. Because it's very easy to send a message over a wireless connection to turn on a light. It's really hard to put it inside the device. Make it nice. Work out how the software will behave and all of those things. So that's what we protect. We make it hard for people to have a look at the code, and we protect that. The other form of protection is actually delivering a good product. It's actually a lot of hard work to make the product easy to use, nice to use. It's probably no secret that we are inspired by people like Apple, who spend a lot of time creating a nice product, even to the point when we lift off the top of the box. What's that experience? So all of those are forms of protection. You're not going to win if you say, hey, we've got lots of patents but no customers, right? So for us, the best protection is actually doing really well. Having customers on your cloud is also a good way to protect your business as well.
Aló. Hola. Primero que nada te quería agradecer por la charla. Normalmente en este tipo de eventos creo que hace falta la conversación política, social, y que como emprendedores también tomemos conciencia.
And it's good for us to be aware of that. And I have an opinion. Just to supplement this lady's comment, I've worked a lot in education and I've
que
sadly realized
o la discriminación está hecha a muy temprana edad.
is made
Yo trabajo
really
en divulgación
early
científica y
stages.
temas
I
tecnológicos
work
con
in
niños
scientific,
y me he dado cuenta que las
decoration
niñas a los
and
10,
scientific
12
work with
años
children,
ya
and I
están
realized that
discriminadas
girls
mentalmente
already
por un
at
problema
age
cultural.
12 have been
Ellas no
discriminated.
deciden por
They don't
tecnología porque no
decide.
quieren.
I mean,
Y
they don't go
lamentablemente
for
después,
technology
como eligieron otra
because they don't
carrera,
want
se dieron
to,
cuenta que
but
no era
just
lo
because they
suyo,
were
entran las ONG
discriminated
y todo lo
against.
que eso.
And they
Entonces
join these
quería
NGOs
ver
and
cuál era tu
stuff.
visión
So I'd like to hear
respecto
about your
de
opinion regarding
cómo los emprendedores,
the way in which
como padres
startups,
y como emprendedores,
entrepreneurs, being
podemos
parents as
trabajar
well. How
para
can
cambiar
us,
esta
we,
cultura que daña
work
y
in
discrimina desde muy
changing this
pequeños.
discriminating
Cuando ya
culture
son grandes, me parece que es un
against
poco más difícil
youngsters?
hacer los cambios, hay que
Because when
hacerlo
you're
igual.
adult,
Pero
you're
deberíamos
an
trabajar
adult,
más en
it's
cómo
about
cambiamos esto
a bit
desde la
late
raíz.
at that
Y
point.
me
How can we
encantaría
start
saber cuál es tu visión al
earlier in
respecto.
making this change? Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, so going on from what I said, from what I answered last time, I think you need to be very conscious and deliberate, right? You can't try to be a nice guy and go, yeah, I'm open. You have to really deliberately create space, especially when they're young. It's interesting, you're right, the effects start very early. So my son, his mother is Swedish, so he's brought up, cooking, baking, doing women's stuff, but we don't call it that. But then when his friend came over with his friend's sister, he said, I'll give her some of these toys. They are girls' toys, so she can play with them. And they are his toys, right? So somewhere he's learned what a girl does and what a boy does. So for me, what I've been trying to do with younger people, my son, my nieces, I actually have to try to explicitly create space, actually encourage them to do things that are, boy things. Because I am a passive sexist. I am someone who has benefited from being a man in this world. I also think they need to see role models. They need to see people who are like, woman scientist, woman computer programmer, all right? If you look at the history, you'll see that women were very involved with computing, and then it splits where, I think with the home computer revolution, right, is the main thesis, that when guys started getting these things into their bedrooms and started doing that, they just got into technology a whole lot more. So for me, I actually know a lot of friends who are leading women in science, technology, engineering and maths. And I try to get people I know looking at them because if you don't have role models, who's your role model? Your mum at home? Or your mum who's working in HR? No, it's maybe your mother who is, who's an engineer. And that's the other thing I think is important. The role models are really, really critical.
Hi. Thank you for your talk. It was really good for me. I've been following your work for a long time because I'm a product designer and a lighting designer too. I'm starting to programming now, and I like it very much. I want to ask you, because in a context like Chile, you don't usually mix technology and product. And when you have an invention like the life that you talk about, it's so hard to find a partner that is your first follower, like you said, like your team is your sorry, I'm gonna talk in Spanish better.
You can say it in Spanish and...
Cuando tú empiezas a trabajar en un producto que es tan innovador como lo que tú hiciste, es muy importante hacer un trabajo colaborativo con gente que pueda encargarse de las áreas importantes que puedan establecer el producto que tú hiciste. En Chile es muy difícil encontrar gente que desarrolle tecnología y producto. ¿Cómo lo hiciste tú para encontrar los primeros seguidores de esta idea tan loca que tuviste en un principio?
Yeah, good question. So we like to look at it as a global market. So it's really helpful to find people in Santiago or Chile who can help you. It's very convenient. But what I would say is, think of the world as your market. Think of the world as a place where you can also find partners, collaborators, team members, employees, things like that, all right? Because when you start doing that, a lot of things open up. So we had people in America that we got to do work, you know, who did work for us, that we work with. We had people in China who helped us. And we also, we had people from all over the world helping us. Australia is not a big place. It's like 20-something million people. And, you know, I think Chile's a few years behind Australia in some of the things that you're doing. But, we are also not a big country. So that's a big thing for us, thinking of yourself as global from day one. What that means, though, is you need to be prepared.
Significa que hay que estar preparados a viajar. Yo sé que hay gente que no le gusta viajar y solo hacen las cosas vía email y hablan, pero no funciona si no se mueven. Hay que estar ahí, en terreno, conocer a otros, mirarle las caras, conocer a la gente.
I'm in the US as well, working with people and partners there. But I think it's important to also take away with you that you are world class. You are world class. All of you can do things that the best people in the world can do. You are the best as well. So don't be afraid to do that.